Hello, welcome. Thanks for being engaged and listening to this presentation and participating in the Envision Pitt County 2045 Comprehensive Plan. My name is Jake Petrosky. I work with Stewart and consulting firm out of Raleigh, North Carolina, and this video is going to go over some highlights from the draft plan and provide directions on how you can stay involved in the planning process. Today we'll be reviewing the basics of the planning process, including the schedule, an overview of engagement activities, feedback we've heard so far, and a draft land use recommendation and other key goals of the plan. A comprehensive plan is a long-range planning document that uses past trends and data and community input to create a 20-year guide for the county. It will provide guidance to county staff and elected officials. It will help them make decisions on things like staffing and programs and infrastructure investment in development decisions. It's a collaborative process. It documents a community conversation. It gives us a chance to talk about what's going well in the county and also talk about new issues that need to be addressed. It's a policy document. It's not regulatory, meaning it offers recommendations that lay the groundwork for future regulations. It is not a rezoning of the county. It does not directly impact zoning regulations immediately, but it could lead to guidance for zoning decisions or potentially zoning updates. Most importantly, the comprehensive plan is a process that's collaborative, and it really allows people to tell the county how you want to grow over the next 10 to 20 years and what your priorities are. A comprehensive plan addresses a number of topics, and it definitely provides recommendations on land use and development, but it also touches on other key aspects of quality of life in Pitt County, including parks and community health, housing, transportation and infrastructure, economic development, and natural and cultural resources. The schedule, a draft plan is almost complete. Public meetings are scheduled for late November, early December, and will be used to gather feedback on the plan. Based on what we hear, staff will be evaluating changes to the draft plan, and the Planning Board and Board of Commissioners want to take the time necessary to gather feedback from the public and get it right and make sure that the plan addresses all our concerns. So next steps in the short term, a draft plan will be available for review and comment on the website, which is www.envisionpittcounty2045.com. There will be public meetings on November 29th and December 1st to gather feedback. And then also during December, we'll consider changes to the plan based on input. In early 2023, the plan will go to the Planning Board for review, and it will have to be recommended by the Planning Board for adoption. Then it will go to the Board of Commissioners, where there'll be a public hearing. After that, plan implementation begins. So there'll be a number of action items that can be moved forward in 2023 and in later years. And every 5 years, there should be a plan review and a major update every 10 years. So that's the steps moving forward. Public engagement was a really big part of this plan. Staff and consultants facilitated 12 total events, including stakeholder meetings and public meetings. The survey had 355 survey responses, and over 100 people attended the stakeholder and public meetings. Some of the things that we heard on the survey were related to land use priorities. Top land use priorities for 2045 include increasing active and passive recreational opportunities, preserving agricultural lands, conservation of open space, addressing the need for affordable housing, and then also encouraging commercial development. We also asked about parks and rec priorities. Number one was greenways and trails. Number 2 was more publicly accessible natural areas. Number 3 was improving water access, including fishing or boat and canoe ramps. And number 4 was more programming and events. Additional themes that we heard from the public included growth management, stormwater and flooding issues, protection of agriculture, transportation and infrastructure priorities, and then housing. A key part of the plan is the future land use recommendations. This includes a future land use map and character areas that are really meant to describe the pattern of growth that's intended in the county over the next 20 years. So when creating the future land use map, we used a variety of inputs. We looked at previous plans and policies from the county. We also looked at land use suitability and different mapping inputs. Overall goals for the plan were factored in, and also public and stakeholder input in terms of what people wanted to see in different parts of the county. Land use suitability was a key input. These maps represent the relative suitability for different kinds of land use. Residential, commercial, and industrial. The green areas represent areas that are really suitable for those kinds of land uses, and different factors were used to create these maps, including environmental and economic factors that go into making a certain property or area more attractive for development. This map shows farms and different agricultural lands in the county. This was a key input in the future land use map, as agriculture is a major part of the county's character and identity. It contributes significantly to the economy and its culture. The map on the right shows properties enrolled in the present use value program for agricultural and timber operations in light green, and then in dark green are the voluntary agricultural districts. Lots of existing agricultural operations in the county. The map on the right shows natural resources. There are a number of sensitive environmental features in the county, including floodplains and wetlands. They represent a development constraint, but they also provide benefits in terms of flood protection, improving water quality, and providing habitat and opportunities for recreation. So the purpose of the future land use map, it provides general land use guidance, and it identifies intended development pattern, including agricultural, residential, commercial, and mixed-use areas, and also provides some recommendations on the design, scale, and density of development. Again, it's policy, it's not regulatory, it's not a zoning map, but it can support rezonings and development design in the future. So that's the key part of it. It also guides infrastructure investment decisions in the county. So the draft future land use map shows 8 different character areas, each with a different color. The reds and pinks represent commercial and mixed-use areas. The blues represent areas where there's some rural centers and public, institutional, or small-scale commercial and services are encouraged. The yellows and light greens are more residential areas, and the medium green represents strategic agricultural areas. And I'll talk a little bit about each of these character areas. So the open space and conservation area is primarily constrained areas, mainly floodplains, but they can have some agricultural and timber activities, some recreational activities, and also some isolated commercial uses where not in conflict with existing residential uses or significant environmental resources. The agricultural area are these strategic farmlands that can include some low-density residential and some limited commercial or institutional uses. The rural residential areas are the light green. These are really meant to act as transition areas between more developed areas and suburban residential areas and more agricultural areas. The suburban residential areas are really opportunities for residential growth in the county. Rural centers and commercial crossroads are areas where there's some historical commercial activities and civic uses, and those would be encouraged in these areas. Commercial mixed-use areas in red are moderate to large-scale commercial development, And then employment industrial areas are those areas that are either have existing industrial uses or are well suited for those uses according to the land use suitability analysis. The southeast area, really on the southeast side of Greenville, the 43 corridor, is an area where the county is seeing a lot of residential growth. So you can see some of those areas where that growth is occurring in that yellow suburban residential area. The rural residential, the light green area, as you get farther out, provides a transition between the suburban residential area and the agricultural area. There's been a lot of coordination with staff and GUC, the Greenville Utilities Commission, on future service areas for water and sewer, and that's reflected in this map. And there's some more detailed recommendations for the NC 43 corridor in the NC 43 South Land Use Plan, and that's in gray because that area is covered by that corridor plan. So overall, some of the highlights from the draft future land use map: it directs future residential growth towards areas served by infrastructure and utilities, or where utilities are planned. It encourages commercial, mixed use, and economic development in key locations in order to balance the tax base and add opportunities for local jobs. It provides a transition from suburban areas to agricultural areas, and it guides development away from key natural resources. In addition to the land use map, there's a number of recommendations related to different topic areas: land use and development, cultural assets and agriculture, housing, economic development, transportation, the natural environment, and parks and community health. There's also goals associated with these topic areas. The land use and development goal is to foster strategic growth and development in appropriate areas of the county while protecting its rural character. The cultural assets and agricultural goal is to maintain and safeguard the county's cultural history and agricultural operations. The housing goal is to prioritize the development of workforce and affordable housing in areas with access to utilities and services. Economic development goal is to build a prosperous, resilient economy that creates equitable opportunities for existing and future residents. The transportation goal is to provide multimodal opportunities and encourage connectivity to support safe and efficient transportation system. And the natural environment goal is to protect water quality, significant natural features, and other natural resources in the county. And then parks and community health, there's two goals associated with that: is to promote active, healthy living, public safety, and access to parks and education, and then support the production of, access to, and consumption of locally produced foods. Each goal has a number of recommendations. I'm just going to hit some highlights in this presentation, but there will be more information in the draft plan. For land use and development, some recommendations related to development pattern, specifically one that supports defined residential growth areas while protecting strategic agricultural lands. A recommendation to maintain Pitt County's rural character and some ideas on how to do that. There can be some updates to protect aspects of rural character in the zoning ordinance, and encourage conservation subdivisions. These subdivisions protect more open space and cluster development on those areas that are appropriate on properties, those areas with better soils and away from natural resources. Also, a recommendation to continue programs that exist that protect and support agriculture. Two programs: the Present Use Value Program that provides tax breaks to working agricultural lands, and then the Voluntary Agricultural District Program that provides protections to farmers. And those are two really important programs that could grow. There's also a recommendation to consider an enhanced Voluntary Agricultural District Program that would include added protections to working farms. There's a recommendation to promote and protect Pitt County's cultural resources, and some recommendations around potentially adopting a historic preservation ordinance and some steps to preserve some key historic structures and areas of the county. Another key recommendation is to reduce impacts to agriculture from new residential development. There's an idea in the plan to encourage the planting of buffers between, or preservation of buffers between new residential development and working agricultural lands in order to reduce impacts of the new subdivision from agricultural operations that have been there for a while. There's also some recommendations related to housing and economic development, like consider allowances for different housing types in key areas, coordination with municipalities to determine the needs and support new affordable and workforce housing initiatives. And then on the economic development side, promote commercial development in key locations to provide necessary goods and services to residents. And then also promote the development of prime industrial lands that are well suited for high-wage jobs. In the transportation section, there's a number of key recommendations, including prioritizing intersection improvements and enhancing roadway connectivity in growing areas in order to reduce traffic on major roads. Also, recommendation to consider bus service enhancements to outlying towns, and there's some specific recommendations for routes in there, and also planning for future greenways and trails. Moving on to the natural resources recommendations, again, adding to existing greenway and trail system benefits transportation and health, but it also benefits natural resources as it can connect folks to the natural environment, but also preserve key habitat corridors. There's some recommendations related to protecting water quality, including enhancements to stormwater regulations to minimize runoff to adjacent properties. And there's also a recommendation to develop the Tar River as a recreational resource. This is something we heard a lot about in stakeholder interviews, the fact that the Tar River is a great asset, but it's an underutilized resource. Specifically, there's some recommendations for an additional public access point between Falkland and Greenville, and one between Greenville and Washington. On the community health side of things, there's a recommendation to provide additional recreational opportunities for county residents and update the Pitt County's comprehensive recreation and park master plan, increase funding for parks and some options to do so, improving access to health care and county services, and then also some ways to support the production of and consumption of locally produced foods. So again, the draft plan will be posted and available for comment later in, probably in December. It will be posted to the website at www.envisionpittcounty2045.com, and also save the date for upcoming public meetings, November 29th and December 1st, where you can review and comment on recommendations in the draft plan. And just thank you for listening to this video, and then also just participating in Envision Pitt County 2045. Thank you so much.